Hey everybody, welcome into the Edge Foundry. This is a new platform here. This is founded by myself, broker underscore DEF and Aramite. And we are kicking off this platform, originating and stemming from some of the late night phone conversations that we've had that have turned out to be fruitful for us. And through these discussions, we've managed a way of communicating our own ideas and our foundations, our upbringings, and life as to what we understand best so far. And in these conversations, we decided that, this would be something that maybe we could bring to an audience and let them participate both in the chat and possibly coming on stage with us as well to hear their understanding of things. And it's the idea behind it is to maybe take a step beyond what I'm used to in these platforms where you see a lot of just debates. And though debates can be good, I also have noticed, I think we've both noticed that though you can glean quite a bit from the debates, oftentimes it just becomes a fight or a way for one person to shut down the other person before they get a chance to fully express the viewpoint that they were trying to get across. And so we had an idea in a friendly manner through our friendly phone conversations of kind of learning, let's try to help the other person coax out the ideas that they're trying to get across instead of quickly shutting them down because we don't believe in what they're saying because of XYZ and shut them. Instead of doing that, let's try to help them get the point across to the best of their ability so that they feel satisfied that the viewpoint that they were trying to portray got portrayed. And whether it's right or wrong or indifferent, at least they got that portrayed as they wish to. And so that's kind of where we want to start this platform from, try to help bring these understandings to light and be supportive of the other person's viewpoint. But we also have decided that it's also good at the end of trying to bring forth the point to its fullest, then to allow the person on the other side to rebut that idea that they've helped bring to light. Then let them also say, well, that's, I'm glad to hear that this is your viewpoint. Did we get that viewpoint brought to light as much as you were trying to bring to light? And if they feel satisfied with it, then we can then say, okay, great. And now I would like to bring forth my points that I disagree with that, the rebuttal to that statement. And so then I may rebut the idea and then let the other person rebut my rebuttal. So it's a way to hopefully bring forth a position and understanding of a certain topic and let that be brought to light in the ways that we can bring it forth for people to understand where I or him is coming from or someone else is coming from, help them to bring that to light and then rebut it and say why we do or don't agree with it. And that way it's not just an I got you type of a platform and no one gets to bring forth the point that they were trying to bring forth. Because I think a big part of something I've seen in the world is that, we all have different upbringings. We all have different foundations. And so although we may agree at a finish point, we may not be viewing things exactly the same because we've had different upbringings, we've had different experiences. And if we're being really truthful and honest with who we are and what we're seeing and what we're trying to portray, we have to understand that no one has our upbringing, no one has our experience besides us. And so this type of a platform hopefully will allow for our viewpoints to be carried out to the fullest and also allow for the rebuttal of that idea by someone who doesn't have those viewpoints. So that's kind of, I think, some of the origins of the idea of this platform. I'm going to turn it over to Eremite, let him add anything he wants to, and give a brief introduction of himself. So, Mr. Eremite.
Broker, well put. I think you really brought this to light in a well spoken manner. You know, we had been sharing um, intellectually, academically, philosophically, spiritually, these ideas back and forth for a long time. And one of the things we recognized right away was that this isn't just for us. This isn't these things that come from God, and are given to His servants and His messengers and His people, and given to the body. They're meant to be used and put into use. And I got sirens in the background now, of course. But you know, and so one of the first things we recognize is, like, look, we've both been feeling compelled, very strongly compelled, um, to bear testimony and give our testimony of our experience, and this is very similar to what to the Bible we read to this day. These guys were operating out of life experiences, and they were responding to the moment, and these were events that were recorded. And not to say that we're on the level of the apostles by any means, but it is to say um, that we recognize that this is a public thing. This is for everybody. And one of the best ways we can serve is by speaking, by sharing and offering to others that same support we need and we've needed in our past. Um, some ideas some ideas can be quite overlapping, yet still be in coherence under other principles. And this is what Broker here was speaking about, that we've made a lot of agreements on the way that were necessary for us to continue in fellowship with each other. We do have to agree to certain things, but there's a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, we have all the time in the world to pick it apart and discover it and find the meanings and the truths in it. And oftentimes, if we're given the opportunity to really really share and get it all out and have somebody help us form our words and form the right questions and really wrap our minds on these subjects, oftentimes there are these beautiful jewels of spirit and information, and they're surrounded by a lot of muck, but this muck was the thing holding all this together, and we needed to get through a lot of this muck to get to the jewels. And another experience we've had is when the spirit comes in and guides the conversation, and that's really important. And we were seeing a lot of these conversations go to waste, in a sense. I mean, meant for us, and it was good for us and each other, and there's nothing wrong with communion in the spirit, but this is not for private interpretation. This is for everyone. And so we wanted to get out there and show how people can still, you don't have to go to war over a few technicalities and nuances, and there's only one road in, there's only one door, and it's a big map out there in the world, but at the end of the day, we're all just looking for that one road, and we're all just trying to help each other find it. And so, Double Edge Foundry, we have quite the contrary positions at times, but we're okay with that because the authority above us, which is Christ Jesus, is our authority, and this is what we adhere to. you know? And so now him and I are on opposite sides of the city with walkie-talkies in our hand, trying to help each other find the road, the
Yeah.
one road. And so I'm eremite and I am a hermit. Eremite is a reference towards a hermit, somebody that sought solitude, that couldn't really convene with the world. And, I feel like an ambassador to this world in the sense that, I don't feel connected to the world. I'm not comfortable or cozy out there. And I think the church has fallen cozy out there. And I don't want to adhere to that. And I feel quite alone. But when you speak about these things publicly and you open yourself, you find that there are many, that are part of that same body and feel the same way. And you
Yeah.
don't have to be a hermit, you know. So
Yeah, and I think to speak to that and get a little bit more to the base of this platform and what we're trying to accomplish is just as you said, there's lots of us out there, and we all have a little bit different of a platform or base, and when I say that, I'm meaning we've had a different upbringing. Everyone has things that they've learned how to tie their shoelaces from their parents, and they know that you gotta turn the handle to open the door. We all have these fundamental basis understandings that help us to get through life, but they're all a little bit different. And so just because one person has a different understanding of what they're being shown from God to help them through life doesn't mean that that's going to align with someone else out there in every way. It probably never will. You'll probably never see eye to eye in all ways with every other Christian out there, because we have different upbringings and we see the world in slightly different ways. But the idea behind this platform is to allow for those differences and to not just shut each other down because of those differences, and instead try to pull out the things that we can understand, or the good things that we can glean from that person and what they're saying, and apply to ourselves, or someone else out there in the community might understand something that Eremite here is trying to explain from his platform, from his understanding and upbringing in life, to try to help getting to that door as he was speaking of. And I might not need that information, or be approaching it from a different angle and have a different outlook. But instead of shutting the other person down, let's help coax out those ideas. And doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but at least help to allow the person to get their viewpoint out there, to help them think through what they're trying to portray. And maybe that will help someone else out there in the community that is not me, or vice versa. And that's kind of what we're hoping. At least one of the things I'm hoping that can come out of this platform is to help pull out some of that information that otherwise may be left behind if we approach this in just a debate platform, where I can cut that down because of this, this, and this, and he doesn't get to finish where he was trying to get to, and I misunderstood where he was trying to get to, and someone else maybe needed that information because they're approaching it as Eremite is, or someone else is. So yeah, I think that we do. He was talking about the church, and I'll go ahead and just bring out right now one of the things that I am trying to portray through this platform. And let your light shine, right? Don't hide it under a bushel, I think is the saying. But to let it shine. And my upbringing and understanding may not align with your understanding, but if it's something that God has revealed to me and to help me in my walk, maybe it will be helpful to someone else out there in their walk. And that's kind of what we're hoping to bring. And I have struggled in the mainstream church, and I may even sound like I'm attacking the church at some points. And it's not that I want to attack the church, but more that I have been awakened through my journey through the church to see that, not only is society quite a ways off track, I believe the church, and I all through all the different denominations, and I know there's a lot, that a lot of power has been lost. That when you go back and read the Bible, there was power happening that it just doesn't seem to be there now. And I'm not saying we can bring all of that back right away, but I believe that it's there. It's always been there. I believe it's us that are straying away from the truth. Therefore, there's not a lot of power behind what we do. And I think that falls on the believers. I believe that we're falling short. It's not that God's power is not there. It's that we're not applying it correctly in our lives to be that powerful, moving thing that it can be. So I even though I originally went into the church to become a pastor, so it's not that I grew up in a church. I was raised in a church. I'm thankful that I was raised in a place where I had a godly understanding, or a family who loved God, who wanted to bring me up in a godly manner. However, I have found through these dealings and through these different churches that I've been in, that there's just a lot of man's traditions in the church that I don't think are godly. And I think they have way too much of a grip on the church, and that we're much more giving heed to man's tradition than God's will. And so that's one of the things that I've been shown, even though I tried to go into the church to work for God, put myself under God so I could be a blessing to the world. The first place I went to do that was in the church. But through much revelation and frustration, it was revealed to me that if I truly want to serve God, I can't do it under that church that I was in. So it's not that I am completely against all churches. I just think we're quite a ways off track, and that if we allow for God's Spirit to work through us, this is a Bible verse too, that you have no need that any man teach you. And it's not that, we like this platform, Edge Foundry, a double-edged sword. We're supposed to have iron sharpen iron, and that's kind of what we're here doing. But, ultimately, if we seek God with all our heart, mind, and soul, there's nothing that can be withheld from us if it's in His will to show us that. And so that's more what I've been leaning on, and I got to that from a hesitant position. I didn't want to have to leave that church, but since my real reason for going to that church in the first place was to serve God, that's ultimately what matters to me. And He showed me, if you want to serve me, you need to serve me and not man's traditions. And that may not be every church, but it's been several that I've been in, and there's a lack of power there. And since I started leaning on God above any other man or any other pastor or bishop or hierarchy, I've had things revealed to me far beyond my wildest understandings. And I think that if we get back to God and yield ourselves to Him in real time, not just a fake, I believe that there was a person named Jesus 2,000 years ago, and that's all I need to know. I think that applying yourself, letting Him work through you, just as Jesus said, if He's our true example, what did He say over and over again? Was, it is not I that speak these words, it's my Father who speaks through me. It is not I that am doing this, it is my Father working through me. And if that's what we would do, is allow God to work through us, and be not our words but his words, and not our works but his works, then that, takes away our filthy rag works and allows God to do things. And of course there's no limit to the power that can come from that, in my opinion. So that's one of the angles that I'm coming at. I I might seem a little anti-establishment, and I just want to be forthright and honest that I just want to get back to the truth, God's will, and I believe that the original church, when you go back and read the New Testament, was very much done in communion, and all things, as Paul said, were to be done for edification, that were done in the church. And I think we've kind of gotten away from that. I think the early churches didn't meet in a temple, because Jesus said it's you are the temple. We are supposed to be the temple. God is supposed to dwell in us, and there's no more a building anymore. And when they met in the first New Testament churches, they were meeting at people's houses and breaking bread, meaning they were having supper together or dinner together. They would eat and drink and commune one with another. And it wasn't just someone at the pulpit at the front of a building, yelling at you for an hour. It's that each person around the table got to share the experience that God was revealing in their life, and it was all to be done in edification. It wasn't that any one person was supposed to fall in line with what the rest of the people think. It was a personal revelation as we walk personal relationships with God. And if we all have different upbringings and foundations, we're all going to have a little bit different angle on things, but it doesn't mean that it's not useful. And that's what I think we're after here, is to bring those points back to light, let people come from the angle they're coming from, and try to just glean the good things we can out of each believer, and let it all be done for edification, and not worry so much about hierarchy. But I've been ranting on a little bit now, so I'll turn it back over to Aramite here and see what he has to say.
Well, thank you for sharing that, broker. I, I appreciate you, being willing to stand up and stand out. Um, and you know, one of the biggest things to me, one of the biggest hiccups I've been seeing, and this is why part of this project is really important to me, is you look out there and people are stressed about sharing their opinions, sharing their beliefs, and people are valuable. They feel that way because they are, in fact, valuable and have been given, in fact, specific revelation of God, and when people, one of the things I've noticed in debate structures is a lack of time, um, a lack of ability. Sometimes you're not so sure what the end goal is. You're really going for it. You just see a hint, a glimmer, a speck of light out there, and you're reaching for it. And you understand the general direction you want to go, and you're really struggling. And some of these thoughts, they're just so multifaceted and intertwined with other things that they can become difficult to discern that narrow way in between these knots and tangles of philosophies and academics. And and so when you add on that time crunch, like, when a person doesn't feel like they're going to have the time to speak, they hurry up, they skip over certain important thoughts, they never get the time to address this, they're worried they're going to be suffering opposition,
Yep.
and so they're stressing to reach this next point that they're making, and they really need someone to reach out in good faith to find the spot in their hearts and their minds and their lives that can connect with this thought, because if they can, maybe they can help them understand that next thought they're looking towards that'll help them get a little bit closer to that speck of light.
Yep.
And when you look at the reflection of this, as it's written in scripture, we have identifiers of this nature. We have references of the potter, and this each being our own vessel, and don't concern yourself with that vessel, and you're a vessel of your own. And who are you to even question your own vesseltude, if we want to call it that, right? And these marks keep coming out. You are in fact unique. You are in fact valued. You do in fact serve a purpose, a unique function. You have a personal relationship with God that nobody else does. And in these things, these are attributes of God to be expressed and represented. And let's face it, the culture is pushing hard to want us to get our thoughts out in like a 30-second meme. you know
Yeah.
like if you can't whip this together in like 10 words or less, you don't get a chance, you don't get the platform to stand. And what in that we're missing is sometimes, like, look, you're pointing in a general direction and you think it's X, Y, and Z, and it turns out it's actually A, B, and C. You did in fact see that light. The light was in fact there. It wasn't X, Y, and Z. It was A, B, C. But you had to stop and look at X, Y, and Z long enough to say, okay, it's not X, it's not Y, it's not Z. But I've spent enough time here that I definitely see that light now.
Yeah.
And if we can offer each other a hand up, a helping hand, and a support structure, recognizing, like, look, none of us got this exactly figured out.
Right.
A
That's
lot
just
of us
an
like to
important
think we
point.
do, but
Right.
yeah. And so we're all kind of struggling, and we're all going to be wrong about something here, something there. But if we can give each other the time, and if I can help you, broker, and broker, you can help me, Eremite, figure out what it was I was seeing, man. Just help me get an idea. Maybe we'll look at that and I'll be like, oh, now that I got it out on the table, that's not going to work at all.
Right.
I'm
Right.
glad I'm glad I was able to get all those pieces out at one time, so
Yep.
that I can see this obvious untruth that
Yeah.
was not obvious to me before.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And that's ultimately what we're after, right? Like personally, what I'm after in this platform is growth for myself and for others out there. And so I have much that I need to holes I need to fill. There's a lot that I don't know. So I'm anxious and eager to hear more of Eremite's viewpoints, and hopefully we can bring in some people from out there in the community if they would like to share some of their points. And as he's saying, I think that we can gain so much out of as I believe it to be such a strong passage where he's speaking of the New Testament church, and he says, let all these things that are being done here in the church be done for edification, because we all do have faults. And if all I'm looking for is a fault in Eremite and I'm going to shut him down because of it, well, we're not going to get very far, because I can probably find something without getting very far into it, that I would consider not right. But if I did that, I would never glean the things that he has that are right that I don't have. And so I'm shutting myself down by shutting him down and not trying to coax out any truth that he may have, even if some of it isn't true. So, and that's what we're kind of trying to bypass, I think, here on this platform, is the debate side of things, where you're just shutting that other person down because you think you can say that that's not right because of some viewpoint that you have, and then you never get to glean the goodness that he was trying to portray in the first part. He got shut down in his lead up to what he was getting to, and I see that happen a lot in debates. And I think if we might approach this more as Paul was saying, if you consider you're going to someone's house and you're going to break bread with them and eat dinner with them, you want to be very polite. You're at someone else's house. You need to be considerate. You need to allow for them to express themselves in a way that might not be perfectly aligned with you, because how could they be perfectly aligned with you? They don't have the knowledge that you have, the upbringing you have. And so if we would take into consideration of letting all those things that we're doing to be done for edification, then we can bypass some of the problems that people have. Because if you're looking to only find pure things from me, you should probably tune out now because I have many problems. And hopefully you'll work through those problems with me so that we can glean some good from me, some good from Eremite, and hopefully good from the community as well. And
Right. We can focus on the pure. We can focus on the pure and let the impure fall to the side, the dross fall
yeah,
off and fall
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Or we can spend all our time fucking pecking at impure,
at the
pecking at the
dross, right?
dross.
Exactly, right.
I'm not here for the dross. I'm here to hammer off the dross real quick, and get, hammering on some metal, hammering out some ideas, hammering out some new structures,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
and the impure will fall to the way
It's gonna fall
as we
anyway.
progress.
That's right.
Yeah, it'll go away. We'll be so caught up in the spirit participating. When two or more gather in my name, there I am. And when he's there and he's instructing us in this conversation and moving and guiding us in this conversation, the impure, I mean, that'll be seem like such a distraction. We're not going to have any interest in it at
Yep,
all.
yep.
Like, because we're going to be so overwhelmed and satisfied with this pureness, this new pureness that comes in, because we were willing to sit down, hammer out the metal for a second and go, whoa, look what's coming out of this,
Yep,
you
yep.
know? And that's
Yeah,
just, it's so much more rewarding, you know?
yeah. Yeah, and as you were saying earlier, through some of our phone conversations, some of it seemed to kind of go to waste. Now, it wasn't for you and me, obviously, and that's always good. However, with other people not knowing what we're talking about, and hopefully this will happen naturally on this platform as we get into some of these topics. But something I think that Eremite will agree with on me on this is through our open dialogue conversations we've had in a long form setting phone call where we've talked for hours and hours, we've found ourselves suddenly, just from being open and honest with each other and kind of pursuing and questioning what are we getting with this, and how did we get there, and what do you see here, suddenly the spirit works through one of us, both of us, and just suddenly he lays out the answer in front of our eyes where we both realize it at the same time. And it wasn't revealed by him or me, it was by the spirit. And we've experienced that a couple times, right? Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about?
yeah. It's
And
great, man.
that's ultimately what I think we're after. If you can let that spirit work through you, that's it. It's not us doing that. That's God's works, and our works are as filthy rags, right? But if we allow God to work through us, well, now suddenly that's God working, and it's not the filthy rags. So we've got to experience that, and it wasn't caught on camera, so I don't know that it will happen in the future. But I think we can both agree when it did happen for us personally, and I've had it with other people as well, but for us both to be able to experience the spirit working in real time and showing us something that we were both questioning, and we both knew instantly when it was shown to us that it
Boom.
was the truth. That's powerful, and that's that power that is kind of missing in lots of areas of modern Christianity. So
Yeah, we
um,
don't serve a boring, neutral, strict adherence God. This is not some rigid monolith of a God we serve. This is a living God, and
yes, oh, that's so
and
important.
and because of this, the law was a good representation of, like, you can't go through life nitpicking everything. There's always going to be some exception to the rule. There's always going to be a +1 or a -1 or a times zero or whatever you want to throw at it. The point being is, we're going to have that anyways. You know, um, I'm missing my point now. I swear I had something more to this, but
No, yeah, I think that's it, and I think that we let the dross fall to the side, and we
yeah,
keep we try to pull out the good information for the person, and I might bring up a topic that I'm thinking we're gonna bring a lot of things to light, and at the end of it, it was a wash and didn't make sense to anybody, including myself, and we'll just have to chalk that one up as a loss. But I
yeah.
think through and this is like I was saying, just through our phone conversations, we've made some gains in our theological understanding that I don't think either one of us would have came to on our own, but through our processing it and talking to each other about it, being open about it, understanding that I have holes in my theology and I need to be open to apply a different way. Maybe that's the way I'm missing, or maybe not. Maybe so it can always be um, vice versa. But in working through that with an open, honest heart and seeking the Spirit of God, I think we've came to revelations that I don't think I know I wouldn't have come to, if we wouldn't have had that conversation. So,
No,
and then
much like we serve a personal God, we have personal revelations and personal experiences, and some things can only be like some types of information can only be understood through an experience. There's
right.
just no
Well,
other
and
way.
and through someone specific. Like this is another key that I think a lot of people miss because we're all supposed to be the body of Christ. Yes, but there's a nose to a body that has a completely different function than an eye or an ear or a toe or a knee. And the knee is not supposed to be the nose. The knee is
No,
not supposed to understand or smell like the nose smells. But it's the knee that's going to get you to where the nose is trying to take you. So it's all important and it's all necessary, and so we need to be a little bit open to some of the thought processes that might not quite align with ours, because there's more to life than my understanding, or his understanding, or anybody's understanding, and we all have flaws. So I think, and I know a big hole that I've seen in the churches that I grew up in and myself, and the way things were viewed, is that oftentimes it was my way or the highway, and you slam your hand on the table type of a thing. You got to believe like we believe, or you're well. I think that can be a big hindrance. Is like I think you can cause just as much grief and problems from not being a little bit open to other people's viewpoints, or allowing for some error in their viewpoints, because we all have error in our viewpoints, and maybe they're viewing things through the eye, or through the nose, or through an ear, in a way that you're not experiencing it. So you need to be a little bit open, and not so closed, and as in debates, you're gonna knock that other person off their rocker quick. Look, let's edify each other and grow together. And if they're making a point that's not true, well, then it's just a point that's not true. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to fall into it. And that's something I often advise. I say never ever jump onto someone else's belief because that's what they believe and it's what they're saying. You should, in my opinion, listen to what they're saying, and then ask God, ask the Spirit, is this something that I need in my life? Is it a truth for me? Is that really true? Is that something that applies to me? Should I allow for that, or shouldn't I? And it should always be a spirit-led thing, whether you think something is true or not true. You should never just, oh, so and so seems like a godly person and he said this, therefore that's what I think. That's just the end of it right there. It's it not necessarily. He might need that. It might be a viewpoint that he has, that God allows in his life, but it's not something that I need in my life. So I don't know. I'm hoping that through some of these basic standards and understandings, and trying to flush the good out of things a little bit more than to shut things down from the bad. Hopefully we can grow a little bit more. So
Yeah.
um, I
And
want
you know,
to
here's
go ahead.
no, please finish up. My
I was just
apologies.
going to say, yeah, I want to go into this is kind of just an introduction, guys, into what this platform is trying to accomplish. I want to go into a few more details about some of the things that I want to bring to light on here. I have a very unique angle that I'm approaching things from. I, came out of a Baptist upbringing and a Baptist background, a Baptist thinking, and I have some approaches or beliefs that I know a lot of the mainstream does not. And it's, in my opinion, it's obviously not from the mainstream, but for me, it's an allowance that I've received from God that, to me, plays out to be true in reality. And I am of the opinion that the truth has always been here. The truth always will be here. And it's kind of like the laws of the universe. You can't really, it is what it is, and you're not going to get out from under that. And so it's just more us aligning with it. And so I think these things are truths that, um, will prove out in reality to be the case. But again, it's just from my standpoint, and I could be wrong. I have much to learn and areas to grow in. So I hope people will be patient with me. But it is going to be, there will be some new things that will be discussed that probably you haven't heard much about. So but yeah, go ahead before I jump into some of those there, Mike.
Guys, already we're kind of seeing a reflection of the necessity of this platform. Um, these are not simple subjects. A lot of, and again, needing the time to get through these. Okay, um, we act like life can be solved with a cheesy statement, or a deposit in the bank account or an order from eBay, and this is not reality, and we know that. Um, it's going to take time to get through these, and on the way, um, you know, both of us will be likely to be modifying our statements, maybe offering some retractions on the way, saying, "Oh, well, I guess that wouldn't really work, but it would have to look more like this." And we're piecing these ideas together. I mean, this is this is more than just you know generically brainstorming. I mean, this is constructive critical exercise. This is learning to listen, learning to learn again, learning to listen, learning to ask good questions, learning how to support an argument again, learning how to support a position, learning how to follow along, follow the bouncing ball, like, and a lot of these platforms we're seeing, they simply just don't give the person the time, like Broker's been explaining time and time again, like they go into these argumentation modes, and it's because like this guy needs to get through this whole thought before he can even start this whole thought, so that he can then explain this thought to finally come around to make his initial point on the grander thought. And if you don't allow that time to like establish the context, establish the formula, and experience this the way the person experienced it, he needs time to kind of go through like multiple stages and layers of feelings, you know, and a single moment could be many, many layers of realizations and lessons, and all from a snap of an experience. And
Yeah.
so it's one of the things that's really important in this kind of dialogue that we're trying to renew. We believed this was here at one time, that
Yeah.
society held this, and they held these things to be true, you know, and that that when debates were not oppositions of opinions, but rather they were they were formal expositions of a new way of thinking, a new life choice to be made, and we all have our worldviews, every single one of us,
Yeah.
and we operate in them as a religion. Your worldview is your religion,
Yeah.
and it's nothing more than that. And when we start carrying our religion into other people's religion, we're going to have operational errors,
Yeah.
and we're going to be so muddied up with the law that nobody can keep, and rules that nobody can follow, you know, and contentions of authority that nobody has, which brings to mind an additional contention that you'll be hearing me address in the future is the contention of what is righteous authority, in fact. What does that mean, a righteous authority? Well, having worked in the oil field, I I have a certain sense of authority when I speak about working in the oil field. This is a natural authority, provided to me by my life experience, and I can speak on certain aspects of that field with authority. Why? Because I lived it
Hmm.
experientially.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to be able to recognize these qualities of characters. I consider all of this is to be put under his feet. Okay. And all of these principalities and all these authorities and all these things, everything
Hmm.
to be put under his authority. And one of the ways I believe that's accomplished is through his body, going out and living out these extraordinarily rare circumstances that could only happen with one person in the world. And
Yeah.
each person gets these micro shots at 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 div- at
Carrying those
being
things
a
out.
vessel of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, carrying out those attributes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
reflecting those attributes of
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
you know? And all things to the glory of God, and all his creation is just reflections and of his attributes. They are not in fact his attributes, they are reflections of his attributes, of his nature, you know?
Yeah,
And
and
so,
you and as I was saying before, there is a truth that's always been there, that will always be there, but and all that can be done is kind of a twisting of reality, and I think that that's quite obvious within our society today, how twisted and upside down things are, and I think that's actually quite telling, to where we are, and ultimately there's always been one truth underneath all of this, and if we would simply allow for the untwisting of it, it's all still right there, it's always been there. So hopefully we can get down into that. Now, he just mentioned a couple of words: law and religion, and there's probably many episodes within those, just those two words and their definitions and how people view them, and we can get further into that. I know I've gleaned quite a bit from Aramite on the subject of law, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And I actually have quite a bit to say about religion, so we can get further into that in upcoming episodes. Again, I don't know, we're at 48 minutes. So
yeah,
I don't know, maybe I'll give a quick, brief description of some of the basics of my
the
belief.
platform.
And you can give some of your bases for some things you might want to cover. And we can wrap this up so that it doesn't get too long on the first one. And what are you thinking?
I think that's a good idea. I let people get an idea of, you know, what what kind of things are about to come falling out of your mouth,
I'm,
and
I'm scared.
mine as well. No, but guys, like, listen, somebody, look here. I've been meaning to say this for a while and a long time, and I'm very thankful to be able to finally say this publicly. Um, is that you know, God's had it on my heart and my soul, real quick. Sorry, real quick, broke. Um, God's had it on my heart, and my mind. I need to get out there and speak. I do have things to say, and so does Broker. And we got stuff to say, and we say it to each other, and that's good. But we recognize, like, no, this is meant for more than us, obviously. And and in recognizing this, the pressure starts applying. And God said to my God said to my soul, he said, look, I'm not picking you because you're special or you're super duper in any kind of a way. Like, I want you to recognize this thing, that it's you or the stones cry out. It's you or a rock. This is how desperate we are in these times. This is how desperate things have gotten, that somebody like Aramite has to come out and speak publicly. Like, dude, I am one step above a rock. If one thing has been made to me very clear to me from God, it's, dude, you are a step above a rock. The only reason you're being pressed so hard right now is because there is better people out there to do this. There are some people out there with the linguistic capabilities of just soothing any ear, but I don't have that. Why me? I'm not special, because it's not about me. It's like, dude, we're running out of people to ask.
Right.
Is anybody going to do this? Anybody at all? Anybody? How about you? It's you or the rock.
Yeah.
I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wanted to, but I've been avoiding it because I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, who am I to do this?
Right. It's
Who am
such a
I?
hard thing to get over is the why me and who am I to say anything to anybody. But like you're
Yeah.
saying, it's not us and it's not about us. And if we can just realize that, well, just let God work through me as he wills. And see, I think that's a big key, is that we ourselves underestimate his creation. And since we're not already walking perfectly in line with him as we should, we don't understand all the things that we can accomplish, because we're not walking in his will as we should be. And so we hesitate and we don't understand it. But the more I've been trusting in and just standing on what I believe he's revealing to me and wanting me to do, and I'm letting him work through me and just following him, instead of, man, have I had revelations beyond my wildest expectations. So I do think that, if we wouldn't, although I know what you mean about feeling like we're one step above a rock, but if we look at it in the way that we are his creation, and we're actually the pinnacle of his creation, and we're made in his image, and so there's more capabilities within us than we would understand. And I think that's where we're missing out. Ultimately, that is what I believe to be our biggest problem, is that I'll just attack the church a little here right off the bat. I think the mainstream.
We ain't here to mince words. We're not here to mince words, bro.
The mainstream churchianity, I kind of refer to as a plastic Christian, is they're not allowing God to work through them as they should be. They're well, I go to church on Sunday and that's how I'm right with God. I allow, I can't, and the church themselves said it best, and I'm going to use their own kind of words against them, in that they have said, and I've heard it said in more than one church, that the congregation cannot rise above the level of the pastor. And I've always had a big issue with that statement. And it struck me the other day why that was bothering me so much. And it's because that is the truth, in that people are following the pastor and they're not actually following God and relying on God. And therefore, what the pastor says is to the highest of their capability. If they would simply plug themselves into God and only God and God first, and he's the most important and nothing else is important as that, and I'm going to do your, well, now suddenly you can way bypass anybody, anywhere, because it's not you that's doing it. And that's kind of something I
The
think we've
Spirit
always,
revealeth all things.
and so I think that the church's own statement there is condemning against themselves. And when they're saying that the people can't rise above them, is because in their structured mindset, they think that they are the leader and no one can rise above what they're showing them. And although I have no problem with iron sharpening iron, that's kind of what we're doing here. But to say that Aramite can't bypass me, or I can't bypass Aramite, like this is a bad thinking. Who, no one can put a limit on one of God's soldiers and what they can do for him. That's between them and God. And what he has in store for me is beyond my understanding, and what he has in store for you is beyond my understanding as well. And it could be way huge, or it could be you just need to do this one little thing that's going to help someone else to do a grand thing. So I don't think it falls on us to put those types of limits or limitations on anything or anyone. And the fact that the church thinks that way kind of shows an error that I think I'm seeing within the church. And it that should not be a mindset that they're placing on the church. So ultimately, it's that the people need to allow for God to work through them. That's why God gave us free will. Like, this is an amazing thing that he made the earth, he made the animals and the grass and everything that's needed for sustenance, and that he gave us the will to either partake in doing it in his will or doing it the way we want to for our own selfish vices. That's just an amazing thing. But if we would allow for his pinnacle of a creation to work through him, then we're suddenly going to start to align with truth and reality, and the society will go from being completely upside down and backwards to starting to line up and do proper. And I think it comes down to people not letting God's Spirit lead them in their everyday life. It should be, and I'm not saying that I have this down pat. It's just that when I do trust in God more than anyone else, when I do stand on him and I, put everything else aside and put all my trust there, and not just trust it, but actually do it. There's a big separation there between, in fact, I'll go ahead and point out something I think that's pretty wrong there is Christians will look at that and say, I can only do what like, it's like we look at us like we're man and we're flawed, and therefore nothing good can come of me. But that's true if we don't allow him to lead us. But if we allow him to lead us, then there's really nothing that can be withheld from us. And the statement from Jesus that, after he's gone, that even we should be able to do greater things than him. That's been a statement that I've had a lot of trouble with. But the more I start to realize that it's because if that was to be the case, it would be because we're allowing God to work through us, just as Jesus allowed God to work through him. And therefore he could accomplish all these things and show the world how to do these things, now that he's performed the sacrifice that allows us to have proper relationship with God, now we can do the same thing he did and should be even greater, because there should be more revelation there. He showed us the way. We can now implement that, and the more of us do that, the more revelation that should come, and the more power that should be revealed in that. So yeah, I think that's ultimately where the large problem lies, is that we've went to thinking, oh, Jesus did everything that needs to be done, and we just need to, like, one of my most hated sayings is when people say, just sit back, God's got this. I think that you're missing the point when you're thinking that. I think that you're the very person who he's looking for to allow himself to work through. He could have worked without us. He could do it without us, but it's his choice that he wants to use us. He made us this free will thing so that we can choose him, and then he can work through us. And that is like the most greatest thing that we don't understand, how great that can be. And when you say sit back, God's got this, it's like saying to God, well, I'm not going to enlist in your army. I'm not going to do it. I'll just sit back and wait for you to take care of all the problems, when he's looking down and saying, is there anybody down there who's willing to step in and do some of my will for me? I made this whole world for you, and you're to rule over it, but we're supposed to rule over it with God running our lives, not rule over it without him. That's what's happening in real time right now, but I think originally we are to have dominion over this earth, but we're supposed to do so in the will of God, through our free will choosing him. And I don't think we've allowed for that type of reality very much. I know that it's missing greatly from the church, in that you get these statements, sit back, God's got this, or you can't, no one in this congregation can rise above the pastor. And these types of statements, to me, are kind of proof that we've left or like the Bible says, your first love. What's your first love? Well, we're supposed to allow God to work through us, to run our life, to be right. We're supposed to put God above with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, with all our strength. That's putting him above anything and everything. And to me, in my reading of things and understanding of things, that's what Jesus did. He put his will down and said, not my will, but your will. These are not my words, but I'm allowing God to speak through me. And to me, that's the biggest place that we're off track, is that we're not allowing ourselves to be used by God.
On that note, you were speaking towards the elements of dominion. Whoa, I need to pay attention. You were speaking towards the elements of like dominion, and not recognizing our proper place as a creation of God, and I think one of the things that people forgot is that we're not supposed to have dominion over our fellow man, and this has been one of the biggest challenges to a godly lifestyle since the dawn of man, is men attempting to control and assert dominance over other men. And this is, Lucifer all over again.
Yep.
Thinking he has the reign, that they should serve him, that they should do his will, and yeah, we were supposed to have dominion over the earth, each one of us, which means we were supposed to be allowed to plot ourselves a nice little piece of land, chop a tree down and build a house. We were supposed to have access to the river and the rainwater. Yes, you were supposed to have those things, but society perverted it, and they wanted control over their fellow man.
Yes.
See,
and
every time, dude, Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no. Let's hear it.
Well, I think that's another one of the bigger points to be made in the big picture is that yes, we're to have dominion over this earth, but I think it was in a free will way. And we're supposed to freely, by our own free will, choose to lay our will down and let his will dominate our lives. And in doing so, all these things will be added unto you: a house, a wife, all those goodly things that you've already been given. But see, that's the point, is it's freely given. It's freely
Well,
given,
and
not
the
by
law
force.
was inherent. The law was inherent in us, meaning like we all knew there was a time on this earth where everybody on earth understood that we came from God pre-flood. Don't tell me not. Don't tell me people are wandering around confused about if there was a God or not. There was a time every man believed in God, you know, and here we are, dude, and we're fighting for dominion with each other, trying to have this dominion, trying to claim this righteousness. We're following through these stupid motions of trying to say who's right and who's wrong and denying that personal experience, you know? And nowadays we just put it under the guise of, the possibility there is no God, and therefore we now have right over you,
Right.
or
Yeah.
something to that effect. But
Well, and I
oh,
think
I
you
was
can.
going to go somewhere else with this, but we've been addressing a lot. My mind's kind of going a lot of places.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to touch a little further on that point, I think that there's a verse in the Bible that says, "The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force." And it's another one of those ones that confused me for a long time, but I think I'm starting to get a little bit of an inkling of what's going on there. In that, as I was saying, we're supposed to have dominion, but it's freely given by God. And so is our place in life. Just like your life was freely given to you. You didn't make yourself born. You didn't give yourself the characteristics that you have. But yet, just like Jesus, he surrendered himself in every way possible and was the sinless sacrifice that made it right for everyone to make it back into relationship with God. And in him doing that greatest sacrifice, free will, mind you, just in the same way, he was freely given all power in heaven and earth. Right after he was crucified and raised again, he was given all power in heaven and earth. And I believe that's because he submitted himself to the ultimate will of God. And even though he knew he was going to be crucified, he said, take this away from me, but nevertheless, if not, not my will, but your will. And in being submitting even all the way down to freely giving his life, in return, he was freely given the kingdom of God to be the King of Kings. So I think that falls into us. And as you have the disciples, one of their mothers came and said, "Let my two sons be on your right and your left in the kingdom of heaven." And Jesus said, "Well, I think you're asking, I understand where you're coming from with this, and it's a good ask, but that is not mine to give." Meaning, those slots of position are going to be given freely by God to those that he deems worthy to have that position, just as Jesus was worthy to be the King of Kings, freely given as he freely gave. So I think that falls back into the whole hierarchy of things. And right now, as we have kingdoms trying to by force kill the other opposition off so they can seize power and have dominion over this earth, that's by force. That's what that verse is talking about. The kingdom of violence, or kingdom of heaven suffer the violence, and the violent take it by force. Is that, yes, the violent right now are trying to take dominion by force when it's not something to be taken by force. It's going to be freely given. And in fact, it's already been freely given to Jesus. Just the rest are now being put under his feet, as you mentioned earlier. So Little
You
rant
know, I'd like to no, I want to respond to that because you're right. Sorry, give me a second to recompose. You know, this force exhibited. You know, we find ourselves in a modern struggle of and modern debates and modern struggles arguing modern terminologies with modern presuppositions. You know, and one way I like to kind of like break out of that is by saying something to the effect of like, look, I am not American first, citizen of heaven first. I am a citizen of heaven first. I am an ambassador in this land. This is not my land. It's not the government I asked for. This
hmm
isn't the rules, the structure, the foundations I asked for. It's not the one I want. And if I was made king tomorrow, I'd be liable to change it. Now, that being said, when we make these arguments, we see this frequently. People make deferring to these presuppositional arguments that they just presuppose are right and righteous. Elements of law, you know, legality,
yeah,
rule, you know, ethic and morality. These don't. These are many of these are subjective issues. These ethics and moralities that they'd
yeah,
love to argue are quite subjective, and in fact, not objectively rooted at all. And I do not supplant myself first and foremost to those positions. You know, um, and by doing so, I don't necessarily agree that that is a right thing. Like when people argue issues of law, I'm like, what law? Whose law? Who are you
yeah,
trying to apply it to? What are you trying to do with it? You know, this is your law, not my law.
yeah,
You know, and you're trying to convince me that this is right or righteous just because it came from your same system that I also think is a false authority,
yeah,
you know, and an illegitimate authority. Because if you look into the biblical aspects of these authorities, and you see that there are delegitimizers built into your authority, like meaning if you are not doing it for XYZ, you are not if you do not meet the prescription of a righteous authority. Check. You are now an illegitimate authority.
hmm
And the world wants us to say that is a legitimate authority. Romans 13.
Romans
You know, where's
13.
that
Yeah, that's what I'm
applause?
saying.
Ah, you know,
Yeah,
but you know, not taking that one step back and saying, all right, well, what are my roots and my foundations? Because my roots and foundations supersede yours. They supersede yours and they supersede mine, you know, and I must adhere to this objective reference point that is God. He is my objective reference point. And so when you expect me to roll over and just to, well, you submit to your authorities. I don't see any authorities over me.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
here.
No, yeah, there is, yeah, no doubt a huge gap in people's understanding, at least in my opinion, on authority structure. And so many, like you saying, are applying today's authority structure as it being God authority structure, and it's obviously not.
No,
So that's
bishops and priests, they put their names on it. You know, oh, I labeled myself a bishop. I labeled myself a priest. This matches the instrument we saw laid out through
right.
XYZ literature, and we've declared this a righteous authority.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
I don't care what name or principality you slap on it. It doesn't make it righteous authority,
right.
you know? And
No,
quite
yeah,
frankly, if I'm not doing anything wrong, you don't have any authority over me.
right, right. Yeah, that's what even our going back to the founding of our country, I think that there was the understanding there of being sovereign yourself, right? And these um these things are self-evident, that all men are created equal in God, and
Endowed by their
our
creator.
endowed by their creator. And if my sovereignness is only under God, then I am free to go about and seeking life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and I'm free to travel about doing so unless I hurt, maim, defraud someone else, which is obviously then taking you out of the sovereignty that you put yourself under with God. Then no man has any rights over me until I do such a thing. And I think that's kind of where that's coming from. And that's what I wish or would like to stand on about what I love about America. But we're so far from that. And I don't even think a lot of people fully comprehend what I'm trying to put across there. I think you're getting it, but
Oh yeah, you're nailing it spot on.
yeah, so I think that is another big problem that people, and like you were saying, we'll get into further about the law. We know both that the law ultimately, what does the law do? Kills,
It brings death.
brings death. There you go, exactly. So
Yeah,
that's something that
the sting of death is sin, and strength of sin is the law.
And what's funny is we're so far into our governance structures. See, like after the fall, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but after the fall of the temple in Jerusalem, Rome kind of took that authority structure, and you had the Jews wanting to kill Jesus so they could keep their authority structure. Even under the Romans, they have their ideals of how to take control of power. And so by force, of course, like we were speaking earlier, I think that this came down through time, through this structure of law, because that was what it was that's what they're wanting to uphold or hold on to, is that law, see, because that's what they thought they got their authority from, whereas Jesus is by the Spirit of God, which is what we should be by. But anyway, they have kept that law structure down through time to keep their authority, and now we're passing more laws per day than you could read and keep up with if you were trying. So it's
which is everything written. It's like written consistently throughout the Bible. Like laws you can't keep, more laws than you can honor. It's like you couldn't do it. Why would you prescribe that to somebody? You couldn't even do that.
You couldn't even keep the basics of the few that we have. Now we're doing more a day than we can even read. And like
everybody's a criminal. I hate it.
I know we're all guilty until proven innocent now. It's backwards. So yeah, these are some of the reasons why I think we are so far off in we're so far off in society, in our religious aspects, which I think is a problem. We'll get into that religion word later. But ultimately, it comes down to the law. Like Jesus was showing, we're getting out from under that. We're getting out from under the temple structure. There's no longer a building or a house of God that he actually never wanted in the first place, and got after David for even thinking about doing such a thing. But then once we were supposed to move out from under that law structure, we're supposed to be under the returned spirit provisions of God. And so there's these two complete counter opposite things. And that to me is where you get into the New Testament, where you talk about who is, there is no longer Jew nor Gentile or male nor female. I think all of that stuff fell away with that. And then now we're supposed to be under this spirit, and the law brings death, but we're under the spirit, which what God is a spirit, and it's the spirit that gives life. And if we're under that, then we're in this new life paradigm. And that, to me, those are the two separate lanes that are, really obvious and bright and glaring. But
I mean, and I think we're at the same time we're seeing like a dual fulfillment, still a living dual fulfillment. The law was never abolished. It
was
the law remains. Yeah, but it still remains. It remains in effect for those that have not participated in the New Deal.
Of course.
Like, look, dude, you're either part of the old deal or you're part of the New Deal. And it's not a false choice. This is the choice,
Yes,
you
yes.
know?
And those
And
realities
so,
have always been realities. They always will be realities. That falls
which,
under that same thing we were talking about, is there's always a
and
truth.
Paul talks about that, the return to the law, about like, whoa, dude, it would be better had you not been born.
Right,
You know, like, dude, that is bad. When you return to the law, what are we supposed to do for you at this point?
right.
You know, like if you've already tasted liberty and then return back to the law, like
Yep.
you've
And
already
I think,
talked yourself out of both.
yeah. And I think that also falls into the sin category. And this is maybe a little bit over my head, but that's where it talks about when Jesus, I think it was Jesus says, or maybe it wasn't. Anyway, he says, we no longer have, obviously it wasn't Jesus because it was after he was dead, but he was saying, woe unto us that do sin. We no longer have an offering to offer to cover that sin. It's like we're crucifying Jesus afresh. And that was one that was hard for me for quite a while, but I think I'm starting to figure that out a little bit too, in that, once we have this truth and we're to be walking in the Spirit, when we step outside of that, we're stepping outside of the Spirit and we're back into sin and
The
death.
sin.
And
Yep.
how are we doing so? It's re-crucifying Jesus. We have to realign ourselves back with Jesus, or else we're bringing him down to crucifying him again, right? So,
Right. Well, because this isn't held in our living relationship, our current standing, you and I, um, we're not held to any kind of a sin. There is no record. We don't, like, you're in a house of no record for us.
right,
Like, not, no sin record here, bro. But if you step outside and decide to input yourself back into that system, then naturally there's a record with that system. It's
yeah,
unavoidable. It's a consequence of the system.
yeah,
The system builds record.
yeah,
That's all the law really does, is put a name on your death.
yeah, and
You
it's
know,
it's
it
very,
gives people, what good is naming it? What good is naming the crime once it's been done? We all know it. We all understand these core principles of justice and truth and mercy and righteousness. And, these things are imprinted on us, so like there's no covering that, if you're not stepping outside of that. And if you're outside of that, you're not operating for that.
yeah, it's like you're
So,
slapping him right in the face, and yeah, I think there is another level of like, you've been given the truth, you have the understanding, you're able to walk in this path, and now you yourself have let yourself step out of that. Now we're saying you're crucifying him afresh. Like, why? It's a little more irking. I don't know how you would say it, but yeah, it's sad. um all right, well, cool. We're at an hour 22. We probably better not take this too far, but how are we doing for our introduction here? What should we
um,
wrap up
I
here?
think I'd like to, if there is a crowd listening at all, if there's anybody listening to us, um, right now, our current short term goal is we'd like to be able to go live. We'd like to be able to interact. We'd like to be able to correspond and get to know y'all, and be able to make this a more fulfilling platform for everybody. Um, and so, as a quick reminder, any participation we can get, any kind of a commitment you guys want to make towards us, we'd appreciate it, because we want to be able to reach you. So, um, feel free to. I'm not saying like, share, subscribe, but I'm saying, um, put us in the barrel, man. Put us in there. You know, we'd like to be able to get to know you more directly and more personally, and for now, this is how it's going to have to be for us, is the pre-records, kind of podcast style. But we're hoping real soon we'll be able to get to see you guys live. And if you've been with us this long, thank you. Appreciate your support, and hopefully we see your encouragement out of this, and hopefully we get to know you soon. So thanks for being here, guys, and we really do appreciate you being here for our introduction to the Double Edge Foundry. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And we ultimately would have went live today, right now, if we could. YouTube says you need, like, I don't know what it is, 50 subscribers or X amount of subscribers before you can go live. So yeah, ultimately we want to have this be a live platform, and we want to be able to interact with you in the comment section. And again, if anyone's even further interested, maybe we can bring you on board and hear some words from you live, direct from the panel here. So yeah, we hope to reach many of you out there who we're hoping also will like a platform like this. This again is for edification for everyone, and me and Eremite, I've gotten lots of edification from him just in our private talks, but we want to bring this to others and help others be able to edify others. And let's all start this trying to edify each other instead of cut each other down so quickly. And sure, there's going to be things that don't work overall, but for the most part, I want us to try to be more open and forgiving of people in their walk and where they're at in their walk. They might be very early on in their walk, and it's not good to just shut people down, just because they're not up to where you are. And so hopefully we can all leave some room for my error. I ask that you would leave room for my errors and problems, because I have them. And hopefully that'll be the case when we bring others on. We can try to be as open as we can with them and allow for as much error as possible, and just edify the things that can be edified. And that's I think the bigger goal here. So yeah, we'd love to have you guys join us. We're going to be putting these videos out on this platform, which is Double Edge Foundry. And Eremite has his own channel. I have my own channel at Broker. So please, hit us all up. We're gonna, try to have this be the main platform in which we can bring each other up for our discussions, and also others from the community up. And also we'll be able to have our own personal channels of Eremite and Broker, where we can further delve into maybe issues that we want to cover personally and whatnot. So, but yeah, we're starting out here at scratch, and we hope you'll join us along the way. And I'm excited about it. I think this will be fun. I think we're going to have some amazing topics that may not be touched on very much in some of the communities that I'm used to in the walk with God, but I think that should be, at least let dialogue happen on them, because it's part of the reality in which we live for these things to be questioned. So yeah, that's all I've got. So yeah, everybody out there, thank you for hanging with us.
Thank you.
Put any questions or comments you have down below. Maybe we can bring them up in the future here. So with that, I think I'll wrap it up, unless you have any further things you'd like to throw in there.
Yeah, guys, just last time, thanks for being here. Really do appreciate it. And we will be a little bit more topical and careful and direct in the future. We just kind of wanted to get a little bit of the preface out of the way, all the, some of the disclaimer. And then that way, whenever we jump right into it, we can operate, just kind of get the ball rolling, man, right from the go. And so hopefully you guys enjoy it,
Yep. And just for a little bit more clarification, the idea behind this main platform is to, 1 week, maybe Eremite will have a subject that comes into his mind. He's like, boy, I'd really like to cover this topic. He'll come in as the main topic host and leader of the show. And for the first hour or whatever it takes while he's trying to express his view, I'll be in the background listening and trying to pull out anything maybe that, you know, he's walking past that we can glean a little bit more from that understanding, and really flesh out the idea to a fuller understanding. And then there'll be a short rebuttal at the end, so that I may seem like I'm agreeing and going along with everything he has to say, when in actuality I disagree with it. But you won't be able to notice until the end when I have a chance to rebut what he's saying. Because again, it's not about tearing that person's ideas down. It's about pulling all of it out that we can. And then you can decide whether you agree or disagree. But it gives a chance to really flesh out the idea is kind of something behind it. So
Yeah, and in that, when the rebuttal portion comes, and you know, broker's going to be, you know, because he'll be listening, participating, helping me, and seeming very on board with me. His rebuttal time will come. One of the unique things we're going to be trying to apply into this is, as he rebuts me, I myself will be attempting to help him glean more of a rebut out of this, to build a better rebut to my statement. I'll be helping him, and encouraging him and helping him build his rebuttal, and which will help me, whether I remain confident or not in my position at that point doesn't really matter. This is an exercise of honesty and integrity, and taking ourselves out of this mix,
yep.
and leaving it up to good faith. You know.
Yep, and that should be edifying to both of us and hopefully the community at large. So that's the idea. So hope you'll join us on that. And yeah, we will catch you all in the next one. Thanks, everybody.